Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. I'm indeed delighted to welcome you all to the Wallot-Sylvestre seminar today.
As you know, this is the third Wallot-Sylvestre seminar. My predecessor, Daniel Caron, is credited with having created this series.
It's a first for me, and it's also the first time we have opened up the series to interested members of the civil service and academia. This inclusive approach is one which I hope will characterize my tenure as head of Library and Archives Canada. By offering the latest in strategic thinking within the information environment, we hope to make a lasting contribution to the ongoing dialogue which will shape all of our futures. The more voices are heard, the more productive the discussion. I'm pleased to provide a little background into Jean-Pierre Wallot and Wallot-Sylvestre, the eminent thinkers who have inspired this series and whose imprint remains forever on the work of LAC.
Jean-Pierre Wallot and I were colleagues at the University of Montreal in the late 70s. In fact, I should say that I had the privilege of working with Jean-Pierre at the University of Montreal. As you know, he had quite a remarkable academic career. He became the National Archivist of Canada in 1985. He was Canada's 6th National Archivist. He was said to be an archival giant, and he is known and recognized especially for the work he did to create the New Archives Act and for his work on the construction of the Preservation Centre.
He was also instrumental in making strides towards the management of electronic records and Canada's audiovisual heritage.
Joseph Jean-Guy Sylvestre was Canada's second national librarian. He was appointed in 1968. Like Jean-Pierre, Mr. Sylvestre had field experience, having been a literacy critic for Le Droit from 1940 to 1948, and editor of the magazine Gants du Ciel from 1943 to 1956. He was also a visionary. His dream was to create a decentralized Canadian library network that would be supported by the National Library.
To this end, he worked on the creation of bibliographic standards for the Union Catalogue and for library systems throughout Canada. He helped also to strengthen major national services such as the National Bibliography. He also expanded the National Library's collection during the 70s and early 80s to such an extent that by the time of his tenure, the end of the tenure, the library was a major national cultural institution with rich and diverse collections of Canadiana, social sciences, and the humanities. The work of these two distinguished individuals brought significant international attention to the Canadian approach to collection, preservation, and service, and their legacies continue to live on in the work we carry out today. And so, in the spirit of excellence, passion, and innovation established by Wallot and Sylvestre, I now turn the podium over to my colleague Corinne Charette, Canada's Chief Information Officer, who will present our speaker. Merci. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Berthiaume.
Good afternoon, everyone.
I join Mr. Berthiaume in welcoming you here today to a presentation that is sure to be very interesting.
It's a real pleasure for me to have the opportunity to be with you here this afternoon and to have the privilege of introducing our guest speaker. I'm also delighted to see that we have so many public servants from the Federal Public Service as well as colleagues from Ottawa and from academia for what will be a fascinating presentation by Monsieur David S. Ferriero entitled Out in Front, Taking a Leadership Role in Open Government. As you know, I've been working hard on the federal government's open government strategy, and the U.S. serves as quite an inspiration to us in this regard. So this is an added opportunity for us. Mr. Ferriero was confirmed as the 10th Archivist of the United States in 2009, and I was very interested to discover that Mr. Ferriero was the first librarian to serve in this capacity. The National Archives and Records Administration also known as NARA, has 47 facilities across the United States, including 13 presidential libraries. The organization is responsible for preserving and providing access to the records of the U.S. government and is currently responsible for approximately 12 billion pages of textual records, 42 million photographs, miles and miles of film and video, and an ever-increasing number of electronic records. And I certainly can appreciate that, given we're a smaller country, we have quite a few ourselves. Previously, Mr. Ferriero served as the Andrew W. Mellon Director of the New York Public Libraries and held top library positions at the Massachusetts Institute of Technology and Duke University. He has a bachelor and a master's degree, both in English literature, from Northeastern University and a master's degree from the Simmons College of Library and Information Science. Mr. Ferriero is a firm believer and an early advocate of open government, as well as a strong advocate of social media, and I am sure we are all anxious to hear what he has to say. So without any further ado, please welcome Mr. Ferriero to the stage.
So it's not too intimidating to be introduced after hearing about who this lecture is named after. We are all great because we build on the work of others, so I'm honored to be invited here. It's nice to be back in Ottawa. I think this is my third trip. Nice to see some old friends and make some new friends. So the Archivist of the United States has a very special relationship with Canada. The former United States ambassador to Canada, David Jacobson, was the guy who actually hired me for this job. He was working on presidential appointments at the time, and I spent a lot of time with him trying to convince me that I should take this opportunity seriously. So, on another front, the flagship building of the National Archives, where my office is on Pennsylvania Avenue in Washington, is across the street from the Canadian Embassy. And there are wonderful staff relationships between my staff and the embassy staff. And we have engaged in several commemorations or celebrations. I like to think of them as actually the 3 C's: commemorations, competitions, and cinema. And the first was our commemoration of the War of 1812. And we decided to have a donut war, and we pitted Tim Horton against Krispy Kreme and watched the movie Strange Brew. I have to tell you that the folks at the embassy FedExed Tim Hortons to Washington from somewhere in Canada. And they arrived, the event was at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. They arrived at about noon, apparently all crushed, squashed. And I got this angry phone call from my contact at the embassy saying, "You did this on purpose." So they drove to Baltimore to replace the Tim Hortons. And I have to tell you, Tim Horton won. Celebrity judges, blind tasting Tim Horton won. So our next commemoration was of the Pig War. Now, how many in this room know about the Pig War? See, I'm amazed at the number of Canadians who don't know their history. We were at war for 12 years over the killing of a pig in the San Juan Island area by a poor guy named Lyman Cutler, who killed this pig because it was marauding his farm. He was an American. It was a Canadian pig. So we commemorated the pig war by, of course, pitting American bacon against Canadian bacon and showing the film Canadian Bacon. And our next adventure is going to be around beer. So I have a great fondness for all things Canadian. My assignment today is to share with you how the United States Archives is playing a leadership role in supporting the President's Open Government Initiative. And to set the stage, let me tell you a little bit about the various roles that the National Archives plays. As the nation's record keeper, we're responsible for guiding the creation, maintenance, and transfer for permanent retention and access to the records of the executive branch agencies, some 275 departments from cabinet level to small commissions. The executive branch also covers the records of the White House. Similarly, they house the records of the Supreme Court and provide courtesy storage for the records of both the Senate and the House of Representatives. So all three branches of the United States government are represented in the holdings of the National Archives. And it wasn't until 1934 that the United States had a National Archives, and we're now, as you heard, in more than 40 facilities across the country, including the 13 presidential libraries, which house the papers and artifacts from the administrations of Herbert Hoover all the way up to George W. Bush. And we're busy thinking about the Obama Library somewhere in the United States. As you heard, it's a collection of 12 billion pieces of paper. To put that in perspective, 12 billion pieces of paper is 1.5 million trees. If you lay those pieces of paper end to end, they would circle the globe 84 times. 42 million photographs, miles and miles of film and video, and more than 5 billion electronic records. So we started collecting electronic mail in 1996. So between the Reagan and Bush 41 administrations, we have about 2.5 million email messages. For the Clinton administration, we have 20 million email messages. Bush 43, we have 210 million email messages. And as he told me when I met with him to go over the plans for his library, very proud of the fact 210 million. He knew exactly how many email messages, and he leaned over the table and he said, and not one of those is mine. And we just recently passed the 1 billion mark in this White House. So that shows you the trajectory of electronic mail. So additional responsibilities, since we have the records, additional responsibilities come to the National Archives. The Information Security Oversight Office, ISOO, is responsible for monitoring classification systems at use across the executive branch of the government. There's now some 2,500 different classifiers. So as you might imagine, there are about 2,500 different standards for classifying information. So what's top secret in one agency may be unclassified in another. That's an exaggeration, I'm sure. 2,500 sounds like a lot, but that's down from 9,700 about 10 years ago. So we're making some progress, but we're not where we need to be. ISOO has a group of outside advisors, the Public Declassification Information Board, very concerned about the over-classification issue within the government, and they have issued a set of recommendations in their report to the President, calling for the reduction in the number of different classification processes to come up with one process for all of the federal government. The Office of Government Information Services, OGIS, serves as the FOIA ombudsman. Any American citizen who's having trouble getting their Freedom of Information Act requests dealt with can deal with my staff. This is an office that was established by Congress at the end of 2009. We handle about 500 requests a year. Many of them are are requests that have been lingering in various federal government agencies for a while. My staff intervenes on behalf of the requester and tries to move the request forward. They also do some dispute resolution training for FOIA officers in each of the agencies. National Declassification Center was established by an executive order from the President at the end of 2009 with a mandate to review about 400 million pages of classified content, review for release. Two criteria by which they could remain classified: weapons of mass destruction or national security. So we had a timetable. We had to finish this work by the end of 2013. Which we did by convening the original classifiers and asking them to review their work. We've finished that review process, and about 87% of it will be released, is in the process of being released to the open shelves. So More importantly, we worked out a process by which this can be done on a regular basis so we can avoid this kind of backlog situation. The Office of the Federal Register. Federal Register, how many of you are familiar with the Federal Register, the United States Federal Register? It's like the government's newspaper. This proposed legislation, hearings coming up, and gives people an opportunity to comment on proposed legislations. It's pretty dense. It has been pretty dense traditionally, and we have blown it up and created a web version of it, which makes it very easy and user-friendly to be able to see where your comments are needed, and it's improved the participation of the American public in the legislation, the creation of new legislation. And finally, the National Historical Publications and Records Commission, which is a grant-making arm of the National Archives that supports state and local archive work and processing and digitization. It's really nice, after all these years being on the side of begging for money, to be on the side of giving money out to folks who need it. So that's a quick overview of what we do. And we'll talk a little bit about open government now. So each new presidential administration comes into office with aspiration for enhancing the quality of life for all Americans by improving how that government works. The Obama administration's big, hairy, audacious goal, beyond healthcare, has been open government. And on his first day in office in January of 2009, he told his senior staff, "I will hold myself as president to a new standard of openness. Our commitment to openness means more than simply informing the American people how decisions are made. It means recognizing that government does not have all the answers and that public officials need to draw on what citizens know. And that's why, as of today, I'm directing members of my administration to find new ways of tapping the knowledge and expertise of ordinary Americans, scientists and civic leaders, educators and entrepreneurs, because the way to solve the problems of our time is by involving the American people in shaping the policies that affect their lives." On that same day, the President issued a memorandum on transparency and open government, committing to an unprecedented level of openness in government to ensure the public trust and establish a system of transparency, public participation, and collaboration. And in December of 2009, an open government directive was issued to each executive branch agency and department requiring agencies to create a more open government by publishing government information online, improving the quality of government information, creating a culture of open government, and formulating an open government plan. So I was confirmed as the 10th archivist in November of 2009. So my first task was to lead the development of our first open government plan. While our mission at the National Archives reflects our goal in open government, we drive openness, cultivate public participation, and strengthen our nation's democracy through public access to high-value records. This was an opportunity to catalog our many actions already in place, but more importantly, to lay the groundwork for a culture of openness, transparency, and collaboration within the agency. Our first open government plan, issued in April of 2010, marked the first time that we used social media tools to garner feedback from the staff and the public. We updated the plan based on the feedback received and published the final version later that year with track changes so those who contributed could clearly see how their input affected the plan. We successfully implemented almost 100 initiatives from that plan, including a new focus on improving our online capabilities in order to foster the public's use of our records. We redesigned our website, archives.gov, with streamlined search capabilities for the research section of the site. And our plan included vital open government projects around records management, the Freedom of Information Act, the Federal Register, and our declassification efforts. And finally, we developed the agency's first social media strategy for the use of both internal and external communication and sharing tools. And in 2011, we launched the Citizen Archivist Dashboard. It supports public engagement with our records by providing tools and platforms for citizen contributions, including tagging and transcription. We were surprised by the enthusiastic response to the dashboard, With no fanfare, we quietly launched our pilot transcription project, Transcriber, and we were stunned to see that virtually all of the documents, 1,000 pages, were transcribed in the first 2 weeks. Not only that, some of the documents were in foreign languages. Like the, this is, we all know we bought Alaska, right? So $7.2 million to the Russians. This is the treaty that went along with that purchase. So we put this up to see what would happen, and it was not only transcribed, it was translated. So this is just amazing how seriously people took this. At the same time we launched our open government plan, I launched a blog, AODIS, where I have posted 186 times, and have so far 300,000 hits. That's me sitting on top of our building with one of my favorite eagles. Starting with a single blog in 2009, we now have 118 social media projects on 14 platforms, with over 120 million in the past year and 100.7 million cumulative followers. I'm proud to say that the National Archives is regarded as a leader in the federal government for our active use of social media to engage the public. Our staff regularly leads workshops and presentations on the use of new tools for other federal agencies wanting to be more open as well. I must tell you that when I arrived at the National Archives, we weren't using social media at all. And I put a huge premium on it because the National Archives is responsible for providing guidance to the federal agencies as well as the White House about the records implications of their uses of technology, no matter what kind of technology that is. And we weren't in a very good position to be able to do that if we weren't using the stuff ourselves. So that's why I supported all of our staff efforts to get more involved in social media. Our 212 update to the Open Government Plan drove us further into citizen engagement. We hired a temporary Wikipedian student as a full-time permanent position. We were the first federal agency or major cultural institution in the United States to do so, and I'm pretty proud of that. This act made a statement to the staff and the public that we take the work of Wikipedia seriously and that we view our relationship with this platform as deeply entwined with our mission of access to the record. Our Wikipedian is building connections with people in the Wikipedian and hacker communities, and more importantly, among the National Archives staff. We know that it's important to build these connections, but here's a data point that floored me. The top 4,000 articles in Wikipedia that include digital copies of National Archives records received more than 1.2 billion views in 2013. 1.2 billion views. As of August of this year, we're well over the 1 billion views, again with a monthly average of about 86 million views on our content. In August, our most viewed record on Wikipedia was the National Archives photo of Joan Baez and Bob Dylan in the March on Washington, used in the folk section of rock music article, which was viewed 985,000 times in 1 month. All of this has resulted in unprecedented access for the National Archives. We launched our current Open Government Plan online in June. More staff from across the agency contributed their ideas for this plan than in any previous plan. Remember, we've got more than 40 facilities across the country with staff in each one of them. And just think of the power of using an exercise like this to get the staff involved in providing their ideas and sharing a new way of providing access to our records. This is an indicator that our culture is changing and we're becoming accustomed to engaging with each other beyond our usual spheres of work. Our flagship effort this year centers on the creation of new crowdsourcing tools to unlock government document records. With more than 12 billion pages of records, the National Archives has a tremendous challenge helping citizens find exactly what they're looking for in our vast holdings. Crowdsourcing tools help unlock the information contained in these records so that the information can actually be used. Our new project seeks to engage citizen developers and civic hacking communities in the open development of these and other tools to benefit not only the National Archives, but crowdsourcing efforts across the government. The components of this plan's flagship initiative are being led by our new Office of Innovation, which acts as a focal point for innovation across the agency and works to strengthen engagement and collaboration among staff, stakeholders, and the public. We're developing a digitization program to support our big, hairy, audacious strategic initiative to digitize all of our analog archival records, all 12 billion. This has been hard for the staff to get their head around. It is the center of our new strategic plan. Make access happen is the goal. And I am convinced, after all these years, you've heard 100 years in research libraries, that if it isn't online, it doesn't exist. So let's stop fighting that and let's make it happen. We've established a digitization governance board that is bringing staff together from across the agency to update our digitization strategy in new ways. We're expanding our definition of digitization partnerships from our traditional genealogical partners to partnerships within the academic and scientific communities. We're working with other agencies such as the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration and the Fish and Wildlife Service to digitize historical records. One of my favorite projects, this NOAA collaboration, is NOAA is studying climate change over time, and we are and they're at the moment focused on the Pacific Northwest in the 1800s, and they're using our ship logs, Navy and Coast Guard ship logs. As you can see on the left-hand side, you probably can't see, but on the left-hand side are the weather conditions and water temperatures, and on the right-hand side are where the ship is and what they're doing. So this is a wonderful collaboration because we get the historical content and they get the weather data. So these things have been mounted on the old weather website, and we've got people from all over the world who are transcribing those for this project. And so NOAA's goal is to track climate change using ship's logs to do that, a new way of using our records. One of the things I learned when I was at the New York Public Library was you never know how this stuff is going to be used, so just get it out there and see what happens. And the example I like to use is that the New York Public Library has a fantastic menu collection. A woman in New York collected menus from restaurants, starting like early 1900s, and her family continued it. So the New York Public Library now has this fantastic collection, hundreds of thousands of menus, gorgeous menus, graphically beautiful, illustrated. And we digitized about 25,000 of them when I was there. And I was got into a lot of trouble with my supervisor because he thought I was frivolous to be doing menus. About 6 months after that, after they were up, a marine biologist from Washington State University let us know that he was using the menus to track fish populations. He wanted to know what was being served, what kind of fish were being served in restaurants. You never know how this stuff is going to be used. Just get it out there. And the ship's logs have wonderful things embedded in them. This is, of course, a preservation nightmare, but the fact that they actually collected wildflowers on this voyage is just amazing. So we launched a beta version of our online public access catalog in September, and the beta has improved search capability as well as crowdsourcing fields for citizen archivists to contribute to the online catalog. One of my lessons that I learned in research libraries is that every time a user does research and mines our collections, we learn so much more about what we have than we knew when they walked in the door. And they walk out the door and get a book or a journal article or something and walk out with all that intelligence about what we have. So we've created an opportunity for folks who are using the records to help us understand what we have so we can share that with the world so the next people coming in can have access to it. The beta has improved search and scalability, as well as crowdsourcing fields for citizen archivists to contribute to the online catalog. And since the launch, we've asked users to send us their feedback so that we can continually improve it. We want to know what works and what doesn't for the users. After all, it's about their experience with the records. The system also has our first API, a set of tools allowing programmers to interact with our catalog. And our plan is for developers to use our API to create all kinds of online experiences, from visualizations of our data to new kinds of finding aids, leveraging the data from our catalog. Understanding the value of the reuse of our data is central to our strategic goal of maximizing our value to the nation. The National Archives was recently selected to host 2 Presidential Innovation Fellows who are now working with us to further develop our crowdsourcing efforts and to deepen our social media efforts into more effective social business tools. The Presidential Innovation Fellow Program was created 2 years ago by the White House. The fellows are selected from thousands of eager applicants across the country, some of our most talented technical minds, many of whom have already made their mark in the tech industry and want to give back by participating in making our government more open. Although much of our work is online, we're developing an innovation hub at our downtown Washington flagship facility. The hub is devoted to incubating, accelerating, and promoting innovative projects that staff will work on with the public. We envision students working with our volunteers to learn about handwritten documents and to try transcribing them from our catalog. Staff from across the agency will discuss archival and technical issues with our Presidential Innovation Fellows, and we'll be able to get feedback that will move us towards solutions on projects such as next generation finding aids, as well as technical and records management issues. We plan to hold scan-a-thons and hackathons with local chapters of coders and already host Wikipedia meetings throughout the year. Our open government plan continues to draw from all corners of the agency. We're working with all executive branch agencies to implement new guidance that addresses the automated electronic management of email and other records, as well as a recent presidential memorandum and directive to manage both permanent and temporary email records in an accessible electronic format by the end of 2016. We are collaborating with industry to establish voluntary data and metadata standards to make it easier for individuals to search publicly available government records. So that presidential memorandum that I just mentioned, we were able actually to get the president interested in electronic records by tying it to his open government initiative. Because I've been saying since I arrived that you can't have open government without good records management. And son of a gun, in his memorandum, he says, you can't have open government without good records management. Boy, did that make me feel good. So our ultimate goal is to streamline and shorten the process of permanent records coming from agencies to making them available to the online public access, an issue that any National Archives is facing. How do we speed up the process? Our National Declassification Center will create a new indexing on demand feature that will allow researchers to have a voice in which records go to the front of the line for declassification and access decisions. Our Office of Government Information Services will expand and formalize its review function by completing and implementing a methodology that defines, among other things, the scope, schedule, criteria, and evaluation questions for reviewing federal agencies' FOIA policies, procedures, and compliance. And OGIS has recently convened a standing advisory committee, a group of stakeholders from within and outside the government. The Office of Federal Register is planning a new release of federalregister.gov. That's what the old Federal Register looks like. As a shelver in the MIT libraries in 1967, I used to have to shelve those things. And I'm so pleased that we have this instead, which will improve the public's ability to access and comment on proposed legislation. And the National Historical Publications and Records Commission, which has funded the Papers of the Founding Fathers projects for many years, paper projects, launched Founders Online, which you can now search seamlessly across 6 paper projects. You want anything in here? No. Damn it. Okay, Founders Online. Something. Founders Online, it must be good, right? Search for Google Founders Online, and you'll find a link to it. It's absolutely fantastic because we've convinced these Papers Project, 6 founding fathers, to search seamlessly across, and you can plug in a term and you can find amazing stuff that you would, for years and years and years, you would never be able to hold this all together. It's absolutely stunning. I'm very proud of it. The United States is an active member, as Canada is, in the Open Government Partnership. This is an international commitment to promote transparency, empower citizens, fight corruption, and harness new technologies to strengthen governance. The United States National Action Plan on Open Government was released in December, brings the role of my agency to the forefront of these efforts. So Open Government Partnership is the second National Action Plan. The action plan lists 10 initiatives, and the first 5 of them belong to the National Archives. They include work modernizing the management of government records so that we manage 21st century records with 21st century technology. We're leading a Freedom of Information Act Modernization Advisory Committee, which will seek public input and develop recommendations for improved administrative and proactive disclosures. The National Action Plan described our efforts to strengthen and transform both the security classification system and the controlled unclassified information program, standardizing the marking and safeguarding of documents which need to be controlled but not classified. And lastly, our National Action Plan includes our work to increase public participation through our crowdsourcing programs. These programs recognize the willingness and ability of citizen archivists to provide contributions that make a huge impact on access. Citizen archivists contribute scanned records, scanned images of records, transcriptions, metadata, and other information that enhances the ability to discover that needle in the haystack. As librarians, archives, and cultural institutions, it's important that we work to strengthen open government in the way we do business and increasingly leverage technology to engage our citizens in the very fabric of our institutions. Thank you very much.